So when it's red, it's on, right?
Yes.
On. Good evening. My name's John Hobbs. It's my privilege to chair this commission, and I want to begin by roll call and flag salute. So if you'll stand for the flag salute, we can remain seated for the roll call. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May I ask the clerk to call the roll, please?
Rodney Blanco,
Present.
Ralph Diaz,
Present.
Albert George,
Present.
Elizabeth Gomez. I thought she was going to attend. John Hobbs,
Present.
Scott James, absent. Marie Macedo,
Present.
Darlene Mata,
Present.
Edward McCurvey,
Present.
Louis Sepulveda, Jose Verduzco.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome you all to the 2021 Advisory Commission on Supervisorial Redistricting. We're meeting in each of the supervisorial districts, and tonight it's District 2. Before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to recognize any representatives of the Tulare City Council that may be present. Would you stand and identify yourself if you're a member of the City Council? Didn't think I recognized anyone. A reminder to the commissioners that anyone else wishing to speak or provide a comment, please raise your hand so I can identify you. And a reminder to the general public that we can't have multiple people speaking, and if you would please, when you approach the microphone, identify yourself by name, and if you wish to, you can give your address. If there's anyone who is in need of translation services, they're available, and if you would just contact Raina in the back of the room. She just raised her hand should you need translation. Any other language translations that might be needed at future meetings, please contact our county staff and at least 48 hours in advance, and they'll make arrangements for the same. The staff email and phone number are listed on your agenda, so refer to that. After the informational presentation, we will take a small break and resume with public comment. So if you want to make comments tonight, please fill out a comment card. You may have been given one as you entered or registered. And before or during the break, comments cards are located at the back table. And by the way, and this is always important, bathrooms are down that hall, and I'm advised that the doors are kind of tough and stiff, so make sure you press or push hard, because there's probably not anybody in there. It's hard to get in. Okay. It's time now for general public comment. Members of the public may comment on any item not appearing on the agenda. Under state law, matters presented under this item cannot be discussed or acted upon by the commission. So we'll take it under advisement, but and for items appearing on the agenda, the public is invited to make comments when the item comes up for commission consideration. Please complete and submit a comment card, as I said before, indicating your interest in that particular agenda item. Any person addressing the board will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes, and there will be a total of 15 minutes allocated to public comment. At all times, please use the microphone, state your name and address for the record. And I'm sure I don't have to remind you, but we're all in this together and for a common purpose, so I would urge you to be polite in making your public comments. If there is anybody who has not filled out a public comment card, I invite you to do so. As I said, they're on the table back there. Next, if the clerk can call those who submitted comments.
At this time, I don't have anybody unless somebody from the public here would like to, that would be perfect.
Say one. Okay.
They have their cards, they just have to turn them.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair, we have Kathleen Wilmes, who would like to speak.
Good evening, and thank you for your time. My name is Kathleen Wilmes. I live at 1404 West Monte Vista Avenue in Visalia, California, in District 3. I'm here as the Vice Chair of SEIU 521's Committee on Political Education. We feel that all citizens of Tulare County deserve fair representation and boundaries. We believe that everyone deserves equal access to services no matter where you live, whether it's the mountains, the country, or in the city. We want to make sure that there's due diligence in this redistricting process. In 2018, our neighbor, Kern County, was sued for their boundaries and the way they put them together. They lost a $5 million lawsuit costing taxpayers this amount of money, which could have gone to other critical services in the area. We want to make sure that the right decision now so that we don't have to waste taxpayers' dollars for bad boundaries. And I thank you for your time and your efforts. Thank you.
We do have a member of the public via Zoom, so give us a moment as they come on board. We do have Laura Hernandez. If you can please unmute your mic. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Laura Hernandez, and I am a Tulare County resident. Great place to live, by the way, for anybody who lives here. Great place to live. I am a very concerned citizen whenever we talk about redistricting because I have been part of that process through working for the census. So I can't divulge any information about that, but I can just say that I've worked for the census and I've seen all the different beautiful parts of our valley. So I am here today as the chair for SEIU 521 Political Committee on Education. As the leaders of this county, the people really depend on you to listen to the needs of the communities, to take input into account in every single aspect of your due diligence. We encourage this board to hold all listening events at times like these when the whole community can be involved, especially in areas that are very underrepresented. These events should be publicized so that ordinary people can be involved in the process. And I believe you already know the areas throughout Tulare County that are not represented, that get lost in the shuffle of the day. And I just want to encourage you to please be diligent in your work. And I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Chair, at this moment, that concludes those who are on Zoom. That concludes.
Are there any other members of the audience that are going to speak in the general public comment? There being none, we will move to I apologize that
We're going to go to item 4.
we're going to go to item 4 on the agenda. And item 4 is approval of the minutes of the commission's June 17th meeting.
Rodney Blanco, District 1, move to approve the minutes from the prior meeting.
Do I have a second?
Ed McCurvey, I second.
Any comments? There being none, and we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Oh, we have a roll call. I'm sorry. Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Yes, and Mr. Chair, if I may, Elizabeth Gomez is on Zoom. She is now connected, so she is now present, and I'm going to also allow her to talk at this moment. Rodney Blanco,
Yes.
Ralph Diaz,
Yes.
Albert George,
Yes.
Elizabeth Gomez. Please unmute your mic. Okay, I'll move on. John Hobbs.
Yes.
Scott James is absent. Marie Macedo.
Yes.
Darlene Mata.
Yes.
Edward McCurvey.
Yes.
Louis Sepulveda.
Yes.
Jose Verduzco.
Yes.
And I will go back to, where is? Okay, we can't hear. She's having problems, but she said yes, so. The motion passes 10, 1 absent.
Normally, my voice carries to the next county without a microphone, but the informational presentations will provide you with insight into the process that we will follow and the equipment we'll use and so on and so forth. So I will now call on staff, John Hess, to begin the presentation.
I'm going to move kind of over here so I can see the crowd and see the commission and most importantly, see the screen. So my name is John Hess, the Assistant County Administrative Officer for Tulare County. Going to give a little rundown of the census process and how that interplays with the redistricting process. So this is sort of an opportunity to see an overview of what it looks like. So what we've done here is we've given you sort of a visual illustration of what populations, how they move over time and why redistricting is important. So redistricting is at its core, its purpose is to ensure that districts that have elected representatives are not only consistent with state law and federal law, but also have equal population distribution. In a couple slides, I'll be going through some parameters. The number one parameter is population equality. And equality in this case means equal population distribution among all districts. So we found this graphic here, and we found it to be very helpful in sort of describing what that means in a graphic form. On the left, let's assume that that's the 2010 boundaries drawn for the supervisors. What it means is at that time there were 5, obviously, that's an illustration, but there were 5 people living in these 4 districts. Then through the next 10 years, what happens is those people move, more people come to Tulare County, more people are born, more people die, all the things that happen throughout the 10-year process occur. And then, so 10 years later, you now have people living in different places and populations are different than when they were in 2010 for our purposes. So in 2021, our responsibility is to make sure that the boundaries are updated if necessary to ensure that those populations are still equal. In this case, you can see the purple lines represent sort of the redistricted boundaries. You can see that now there's people who are in different places. There's people who are now, and those districts look smaller and different. This is sort of a graphical illustration of the main purpose of redistricting.
John,
Next slide.
John, can you slow down a little bit?
Oh, sorry about that. Paul, I am a fast talker, so I always try to remember to talk more slowly, but I usually forget. Sorry about that. All right, next slide. So this is a little bit of text here to talk about kind of a little bit of what I just said, which is clearly the redistricting process occurs every 10 years. It's part of the census. The census is in the United States Constitution, and it's done for the purpose of apportioning representatives throughout all governments. What we're doing here tonight, and what our interest and this commission's interest is only for county government, Tulare County government. So this commission is specifically involved in county board of supervisors, not city council, not Senate, state Senate that is, or state assembly, or the Congress of the United States. Nothing of those. Those have different entities overseeing their process. The commission is going to be drawing their boundaries consistent with a variety of legal framework, a variety of legal requirements. Chief among them is the Federal Voting Rights Act. Then there's state level Fair Maps Act, and then there's any local requirements that can be opposed by this same commission. And they're very clearly enumerated and outlined among 8 criteria, which we will show here in just a moment. And those really do a good job of explaining sort of why the boundaries might look the way they do and how they're drawn and what the commission's going to be considering when they go in the process of drawing up maps. The first thing that we need to do this is census information, which if everybody recognized, recently there was a census done and hopefully everyone had a chance to participate in some way. What that new data does is it tells the commission how populations have changed in Tulare County and where the boundaries need to be drawn to accommodate them. So the commission here, their timeline to do all of this is set by the state of California. What they're doing is they're going to be through the next few months soliciting comments from you, the public, from members of the public, incorporating it into any maps that they draw, then presenting those maps to the Board of Supervisors. What they need is the census to come out in September. So between now and September, these informational meetings are being held to let you know that this process is coming and to be ready for any recommendations that you may have come later this fall. Then they'll do their presentations to the board in November, December, and then what's important, we added this date here this time, is that in June of next year, that will be the first primary held with the new boundaries. So we're in District 2. Let's go to the next slide. I think this is on the next slide. Well, it's on the slide after that. But anyways, we'll get there in a second. We are in District 2, so hold that thought. Here's a little more on the schedule. Oh, we'll just do it right now. Thanks, Melinda. So we're in District 2. You can see right here, Supervisor Pete Vanderpool is your representative. If you're a resident of District 2, he's your representative on the Board of Supervisors. In next year, in June, supervisors for District 4 and 5 will be up for election. So those 2 board members will be subject to the new boundaries that the commission is going to recommend and that the Board of Supervisors will draw. So it's important that it will have very soon impacts in less than a year for representatives in Tulare County. So it's really important that we move through this with a lot of interest in the public's comments. So if we back up just a second, thank you. The process that the Board of Supervisors has established is kind of shown here in graphical form. First, the Board of Supervisors made the decision to establish an advisory redistricting commission. There's a couple different kind of commissions that the Board of Supervisors could have chosen. They chose an advisory version, which is different than independent commission. This commission, their role is to hear from you, incorporate those comments into maps, and then provide those maps to the Board of Supervisors. The board has full discretion in the end and full authority to adopt the maps within their own jurisdiction, within their own sort of thinking. If they look at whatever maps they want, provided those maps are in compliance with federal and state law, they can adopt them as they see fit. So the role of the commission here is their job is to strongly influence and give great recommendations to the board as to what those boundaries should look like, but it's still the board's final call on that. Next, we are in the process of that second bubble, which is seeking public comment on boundary changes, and we'll do that over the next few weeks. Then we're into number 3, which is we will actually use the census data to draw maps. Then on the fourth bubble, the commission will recommend 3 alternative maps. That's sort of what staff is going to ask the commission to do, is to recommend 3 maps to the Board of Supervisors with rationale and explanation for each one of them, saying why they're different. And I'll show you some map illustrations from 10 years ago as to why they can look so different, and how, what I find to be interesting is how, even though they look very different, they can independently still comply with all the various different parameters. So you can draw maps. We could look at perhaps 10 maps. Each one of them is compliant with all the federal requirements and state requirements, but they look very different. So that's, I find, to be an interesting part of this process. And then finally, number 5, the Board of Supervisors adopts, modifies the final maps in their final form. All right, next slide. So here are the current boundaries for Tulare County and the 5 Board of Supervisors. These were drawn in 10 years ago. At the time, in 2010, the population for Tulare County was 422,206 individuals. And as you see on this table, the primary intent, as I've mentioned, I'm going to repeat a lot of these things because some of them are very, very important, and they're very profound as to how they influence why maps are drawn the way that they are. So you see here in the population column, they are within at least 1 to 1.5% of deviation from each other. So the population equality is the highest one, looks like it's about 89,593. The lowest one's about 87,282 is the lowest one. One's 1.3 up, one's 1.3 down. So that's within a legal sort of margin of error for us to have the population equality and still be in compliance with state law. What's interesting, a couple things that are from a geographic map drawing perspective is if you look on the map, if you purely look at the map, and if you know the geography of Tulare County, those, even though District 3, which is Visalia, is very small, it looks really super small compared to District 5, it has the same amount of people as District 5. So that tells you that District 3 has a lot more density. Population density in the city of Visalia there's people who pack in neighborhoods and in the town, versus in District 5, if you're familiar with that area of the county, there's a large rural mountainous area up there where, sure, there are some folks who live up there permanently, meaning all year round. There's some people who live there seasonally, but there's just massive mileage up there where people just don't live. And so it's interesting that you can have in place like Tulare County, a very large, many, perhaps even 1,000 square miles versus a district that's a much smaller area, yet they both have the same amount of people in them. Next slide. So here are the eight redistricting criteria. We've got 2 per slide here. The first one I mentioned many, many times already is population equality. That districts are required to be equal in population as required by the state constitution, and the population equality shall be based on the total population of residents determined by the census. I've mentioned that several times already because it's just so important. That's the chief reason why this commission is here tonight and why they're here to listen to you, the public, about the map drawing process. That's the real number 1 reason why we're here. Number 2, everything has to comply with the law. That's probably not shocking when the government does something. Hopefully we're doing so in accordance with the law, and there's a variety of legal requirements that we have to adhere to. Next slide. Contiguity. So, and these are, I meant to mention also, these are in order of priority, which is to say that if someone were to challenge or dispute the maps that perhaps the commission recommends or the Board of Supervisors adopts, there's greater severity applied to the first criteria than the bottom criteria. And also, this is a comment also in simultaneously for the commissioners, is that as they go about doing their task and their job, they should focus on the first one and then following in order. So as we go through them, keep that in mind, that those first ones are the most important and they become less important, but still requirements as we go along. Number 3 is what we call contiguity, which is, to the extent practicable, all district boundaries must be contiguous. Pretty easy. I don't believe it's going to be very difficult for our commissioners and the board to achieve that. Essentially, the boundaries need to be one unit. You can't split up District 3, for example, because you couldn't go to one side of Visalia and the other side of Visalia. It all has to be contiguous. It can't be split into 2 different boundary sections. Number 4, this is a community integrity. This one, to the extent practicable, what the commission and what the Board of Supervisors needs to do is respect the geographic integrity of communities of interest. This is very, very important, and this is an area that a lot of community members have a lot of interest in, a lot of the public has a lot of interest in, and it's also something that a lot of people question whether or not the boundaries are in compliance in. So this is a very delicate area that requires a lot of sensitivity on how they're drawn. So this one specifically, we have, because it's so important and because that term, community of interest, is very pivotal, it's a very important term as part of the redistricting process, we have a whole slide dedicated to that just in a little bit here. So I'm going to hold that thought for community of interest in just a moment. Next slide. City or CDP integrity, much like that boundary where you can't subdivide the districts into separate areas, you can't do that for cities. So in Tulare County, there are 8 incorporated cities, but there are a whole lot of what we call CDPs, which are census designated places. So most of the people here, I imagine, are Tulare residents or maybe in the area of Tulare. Tipton, if you're familiar with Tipton or Pixley or Early Mart, those are CDPs. They're not incorporated cities, so they don't have city councils or mayors or those sorts of things, but they are communities and they are census designated places. So in the same way, the county cannot sort of split the city of Tulare in half. It would not be fair, and it would not be in the interest of the community of Tulare residents to do, let's say, for example, down the middle of 99, where one half of Tulare lives in one district and the other half lives in another district. And we'll get to why that's important here in a moment, but essentially you would be subdividing the city's interests via 2 different Board of Supervisors. So policies that the Board of Supervisors would consider, be it planning policies or policies regarding animal control, you might have 2 different board members who have 2 different policy opinions, 2 different opinions as to how that should be applied, but yet represent the same city. And you can kind of see how that might create an issue or a conflict for City of Tulare residents. So number 6, identifiable boundaries. What this means is that when you look at a map of Tulare County, the boundaries for the Board of Supervisors should follow some kind of visibly logical pattern. They should follow either a road, a river, a mountain range, something that when you look at a map, you can say, okay, that's a reasonable place to draw a boundary between 2 different places. So, and all of these, as you probably can kind of guess at this point, a lot of these are done to avoid what's called gerrymandering. Those really funny looking districts that swoop way high and then go really low and kind of split people apart. All of these are done to ensure that that doesn't happen and that districts are drawn in the best interest of the community members that they serve, which speaks to that community of interest here we'll look at in a second. Next slide. Compactness. So we're getting down to the lower ones. I don't, they're still important, we gotta do them all, but they're getting a little more less important, let's say. So compactness means that the district itself has to be geographically compact. It can't be such that you have residents represented by a Board of Supervisors member who live perhaps 30 miles or 40 miles apart from each other. I've got some map illustrations here in a little bit that kind of show how that would violate this particular compactness, where you have people who live, again, I'll use Early Mart. Let's use Early Mart as an example. There's a map we'll look at in a moment that has Early Mart and perhaps Dinuba in the same board district. And if you're familiar with Tulare County's geography, those are very far apart, and those communities don't really interact with each other. Early Mart interacts with Tulare a lot. There's a lot of people who come to this area. Pixley, I believe the high school feeds into Tulare, so there's some reasonable connection there. People do business and so forth. Dinuba is not really connected there, but Cutler Rossi and Dinuba do a lot of interaction with each other, so that makes sense for a compactness purpose. And then finally, no political parties. The state law now requires that redistricting does not acknowledge the geography of political party residents. So you might have certain people who live in a certain area and certain party who lives in a different area. You can't acknowledge that when it comes to redistricting. What's nice about our purpose here for Tulare County is the Board of Supervisors is a nonpartisan elected office. They're not elected by virtue of a party ticket. So really it's something that wouldn't, we have to adhere to this, But fortunately, it's not something that we would have, considered anyways. I think we have time for questions later, but I'm gonna look at the chair to see how he wants to handle questions. All right, so all right. You can remember that slide. Yep, we'll keep it. We'll remember that. All right, Melinda. So here is a community of interest slide that I promised a moment ago. The communities of interest are, here I'll just go through this, is that boundaries have to be drawn in such a way that and we choose our words very carefully here because it's very important how we can bring this up, is that they optimize the electoral influence of communities of interest. And communities of interest could be any number of things. It could be an ethnic community of interest, a language community of interest. It could be a variety of things. For example, in New York City, there was a type of building that residents owned, and those individuals believed, because it was a similar kind of building that they all owned, they said, hey, we are a community, all of us owners who own this type of building, we are similar, we have similar interests, we own a similar type of building. We want to make sure that we are recognized as a community of interest in the redistricting process, because in their case, if the city of New York were to impose new policies, they wanted to make sure that the city was cognizant, or that their representative knew about their particular property interests and what that would look like. Last week I picked on the Raiders. So for example, if you had the Niners and a Raiders area of Tulare County, or if you had a Dodgers and a Giants area of Tulare County, that would be a community of interest. And if you wanted to say, hey, we're going to make sure that we all sort of advance our particular interests, you could do that. The purpose being is that the boundaries have to ensure that communities of interest have the optimal amount of influence when electing representatives. So if, for example, you had an area of the county where you had a certain community that lived there, people who shared a certain interest, and we knew that. That was just a fact. Perhaps it was shown in the census information, or perhaps it's just a fact that people know who live in Tulare County. They know, gee whiz, that's where people who own a certain type of horse live. They just all live over there. Okay, then we say, okay, those people who live here, we need to make sure that either one of a couple things happens. Either that they are in a district, depending on how many of these are in this community, that they are within one district such that they can maximize their electoral influence and then elect a board member who represents their shared interest. Or if there are a lot of them, we need to ensure, meaning the boundaries that are drawn need to ensure that they're not packed, that's called packing, that they're not packed into one district, because then their electoral influence is sort of wasted. Meaning that if there were a lot of these individuals, if let's say these people who own the horses lived all throughout the county, and they're really, really advocates about this type of hobby that they had and they thought was really important, and there were many of them, it would be against their interests to jam them all into one district and say, all right, 80% of those people live in this one district, because now they would have an over-influence for electing a representative for that one district. So what the other alternative is ensuring that they live, or rather that the boundaries are drawn to put them in a variety of districts, so that perhaps there's enough individuals that they could actually elect 2 or maybe 3 representatives who also share that interest of theirs. If these individuals are 70% of the population, arguably they should be able to influence 70% of the seats, 2, 3, or 4 of the seats. That's kind of the theory. That's the underlying purpose of a community of interest. When we, the commission, the board of supervisors, the county, when there's an ask about what is a community of interest and how does the commission know that they've encountered a community of interest that needs to be acknowledged in the redistricting process, these are some common questions that are asked. First, what are the economic, social, or cultural interests that your community shares? Meaning that the members of that community need to acknowledge and recognize that we have a shared goal and we have a shared purpose. Be it, again, we own a certain property, we come from a certain ethnic background, we share a certain language background, whatever it is. Number 2, where is your community located geographically? The maps can only serve that community to the extent they're aware of the geographic residents of those members of the community. So if we don't know where those community members reside, it wouldn't be possible to draw map boundaries that accommodate that community. Finally, number 3 is your shared interest within the policy jurisdiction of Tulare County, meaning that I kind of use the horse thing or the radar, those are hypotheticals that really don't have anything in relation to policies of the Tulare County Board of Supervisors. So while there may be an organization in Tulare County that has a shared community of interest, if it's not something that the Tulare County Board of Supervisors or the County of Tulare government is going to really have jurisdiction over, perhaps it's not a community of interest that the commission or the board is really going to consider when they draw maps. All right, next slide, please. All right, so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go through, I think it's really helpful to hear all that. That's really good, theoretical information, but it's all kind of abstract. It's kind of, just theoretical until we see what it looks like in some maps. So what we've done here is we've taken a couple maps from 10 years ago, because we haven't drawn any maps. The commission has not done any map drawing yet, because they can't do that until they get the census information. So what we've done here is we've pulled out some sample maps from 10 years ago to show how these maps can be drawn very differently, but still be consistent with state law. This first map here is the 2001 map. So this is the map 10 years ago that they were working with, meaning like as we're working with the 2010 map, the 2011 map, they were doing so with this map. And so if we can go to the next slide, this is now the current map that was drawn 10 years ago. And you can see how there's been some changes. What I want to point out are some small unincorporated communities that made a big difference in that population change. Here in District 2, they're actually District 2 examples. There's a little town called Woodville. Not far from here, you go out to the country and there's Woodville. And then keep going down past Porterville, there's a little community called Rich Grove. Those two communities made enough of the difference. They switched districts. Both of them went from one to the other, and they went the reverse direction. But they were enough. They're very small. If you've been there, probably 2,000 people live in there. But they were enough to make the difference between the population equality in those districts, in the two districts. So again, when we get down to counting individuals and putting the boundaries, really small boundary changes can make the difference between the final map or a map that works or doesn't work. Next slide. Here's one that was submitted to the Board of Supervisors by the commission. This is not the one that was adopted. What you can see here is District 4 to the north includes Dinuba and Cutler Rossi. Visalia, which is very large. So as I mentioned earlier, one of the requirements is that all of the districts have to have equal population distribution. We're about 440,000 people in Tulare County right now. I'm guessing we're going to be about 500,000 people at the next census, when that census data comes out. Perhaps we're a little more, a little less, but let's say for the purpose of tonight's discussion, we're 500,000. Pretty easy to figure out what the population distribution is going to be. It's 100,000 for each district. So Visalia, that is 140,000 people, let's say, live in the city of Visalia. So clearly, Visalia automatically exceeds the population limit to be one district. It can't be one district because you couldn't do 140 in Visalia and then 60 somewhere else. That would not be consistent with state law. So very clearly, Visalia is going to be split down the middle. How the commission wants to do that split remains to be seen until we see the census information, take public comment, but it's going to have to happen. You'll see on each of these maps, they split Visalia in different ways to solve that problem. Next slide. In this one, this is closer to the final map that was actually adopted. You have 3 districts that represent mountain areas. District 2 here in the valley, and Visalia are kind of just smaller districts here, much closer to what's actually adopted today. Next slide. If you saw that change, if you saw that graphical change, now District 5, if you look, becomes all mountains. That green boundary now, everybody who lives in the mountains, whether you're all the way up at Hume, Badger, or Heartland, that area of Tulare County, are all the way down in Idlewild, Ponderosa, California Hot Springs, which are very far apart. They take quite a while. You'd have to go back to the valley and then back up. Those are all represented by the same board member there. Perhaps the reasoning behind this is speculation. Perhaps the reasoning behind was that the folks who lived in the mountains came down and said, hey, we're a community of interest. We have similar fire hazards, water issues, tree mortality. We have these sort of similar interests, and we want to make sure that the board member we elect universally represents our mountainous interests. And there's an argument to be made there. That's a fair community of interest to advance their cause. What it does do is it kind of pushes the other ones around. You can kind of see, I think what happens is Dinuba and Cutler-Rossi get split up, which has been, traditionally, they've been combined in the same district for many, many years. So that's a little different than historical tradition. Next slide. Here's another scenario. This one's Visalia divided into 2 different districts developed by the committee 2 years ago. Kind of similar. You see 2 different districts in the mountains, 1, 2, or 3 in the valley. Visalia is split up among a variety of different board member districts. What at the bottom, it's kind of hard to see, but it's really, the data doesn't really matter for tonight. But you see that table down at the bottom. Those are the data that the commission requested staff present for each map back then and 10 years ago. So one of the essential pieces of data is the number of population in each boundary district. What's important is each one of these complied with the parameters at the time. So that table essentially verified, it was the commission's way to verify that yes, these boundaries do actually comply with the population requirements. Next slide. Similar one, just keeps on changing, and small minor changes just keep happening. Very, very almost indiscernible changes go from each one that make a bit of a difference. Next slide. Did it change? Was it that? It was that small? I didn't even see it. All right, so it was that small. That's how small they can be. I didn't even know it happened. All right, go to the next one, because this one I can definitely see that happen. This one's fun. This one's my favorite one. What you can see here, I call this a candy cane one. It looks goofy to me, but the person who submitted it had a rationale, and in the next slide kind of has his reasoning behind it. And what's interesting, it complies with many of the parameters, not all of them. I would argue perhaps that compactness isn't represented well here. This was the one that I was mentioning earlier, that Early Mart, all the way down almost to the county line, is in the same district as part of Dinuba. Just really, in that way, doesn't make a lot of sense. But this person really thought that this would be a way to make sure that board members were evenly distributed. All right, next slide. And this is the gentleman's rationale that he provided. Very well reasoned, very well researched, and he had his reasoning. They complied with a variety of legal requirements that he believed were important. So I think it's fair to show that he went through his reasoning on that. All right, Melinda, next slide. All right, that concludes my informational presentation. So at this point, I'll hand it back to Mr. Hobbs, the chair.
We're going to call on you now. This presentation will deal with the redistricting software and Mark Clark is going to be our presenter. Mark has done this 3 times. That covers a 30-year period, and
I was sort of marginally involved in '91, so it's 4. This will be 4 for me. And that cool map John shows, what's got the lines all the way down. It looks great, but I'm the one that had to make that guy's line drawing figure out how to make it work. But I'm going to talk about my name's Mark Clark. I'm with Tulare County IT, the GIS division, which is Geographic Information Systems. And like the chairman said, I've done this several times, and it's obvious John likes the process. I sure like the process because I like apps and the data. I've been working with census data since '91. So I'm going to show you what we're going to use to do this redistricting, and this is different because now you guys can participate. In the past, it was just me with my software sitting in my cubicle doing it, and now everyone can participate more. So I'm going to show you how cool it is. So at the moment, this app only has the 2010 census data, right? Because as John said, 2020 isn't out yet. It comes out about mid-September. We'll get rushed into this solution, and then we can start making plans. So we're here to show you what it's like, and we're going to provide training on it, so you can make your own plans if you want to try it. So because of this, it cannot at this time use this software to make a plan that meets the legal requirements, because you just don't have the data. All we can do is train on how to use it. This presentation is just an overview, not a training. So I'm just going to show you some ideas, and then we'll have training later, and we're going to train the commission, the ones to use it so they can help people in their communities too. So it's made available, like I said, so made available now so you can use it. The next one is really important. There's no change in the process. The process is still the same as it was even 20 years ago. We take the census blocks, we take advice from, well, do the direction of the commission. I make those things, put them together with their direction and show them the plans, and then we revise those plans, say, well, it could be like this and all that. But it's still the commission getting the input and advising me what to do and submitting it to the Board of Supervisors. All that's changed is the tools that we use, but the process is still the same. And as we've talked about in other meetings, you can submit your ideas any way you want. If you have a community interest and you just want to take an old map of the county and draw it, you can submit that. There's other mapping tools. I got one listed there, drawmycacommunity.org. Takes a little more work because you got to figure out some computer things. But any way you want to submit a plan, you don't have to use the app. It's still like it always was. You can submit it how you want. Let me go to the next one. So here's how you get to the software. It should be in the agenda with that QR code or that URL. Let me go next. Uh-oh, it didn't go. This thing's not working on me. All right. So here's what it looks like when you first come in. I put this old map of Tulare County. You can see in the back, the colors in the back, that's when Tulare County and Kings County were one big county, but that's the board districts from back then in whatever that says, 1890 or something like that. And for you to get started, you just go and press the link I've highlighted that says create an account, okay? Press that button. We can go to the next slide. Oh, wait, that time it worked for me. This slide is just your information, right? Your name and your address, your password. So establish username, sort of the standard stuff you do whenever you go to register at a website. That's so we have an idea of, it's a way we can help sort of make sure it's from Tulare County residents somehow, right? Not other people. Actually, it doesn't have an address, just email address. So the next one. When you get that figured out, we get that all filled out, it takes you to this page. This is the first page you see once you create your account, and you can see there's 3 different plans that I put in there that you can start with. So you pick one of those plans, like if you want to use it based on the current Tulare County districts, the bottom one is that one. And then there's one where you can just submit your community of interest, and there's one where you can just start with a blank slate. It just starts with the county, and you can draw them however you want without any regard to the current lines. So you pick the one you want, and then you hit open plan down over here on the lower right. Is it going to work? It's not working for me again. Okay. Next slide then. There we go. So you pick which one you want, and then next would be open the plan. Yeah. And then next. So if you open the current plan, that's what this is right here. It opens, looks just like that when it comes up. It has the statistics down at the bottom, and you can see the colors for the districts match the ones on the screen for the districts themselves, and there's a series of ribbon tabs across the top, just like you see in most software. So the first one is simply the usual file stuff, right? Save and open a new one, things like that. So if you're familiar with most programs, you can figure that part out. And again, there'll be training on how to do it. So can we go to the next one? And you can zoom in. You can use your mouse wheel to zoom in and out. You can use your mouse to move around. So I've zoomed into North Visalia because that's where a lot of changes make a big difference, right? Just a couple of those census blocks in there make a huge difference. That's why all those plans John showed, if we would have zoomed into that area, there would have been really noticeable changes in there. So the next is the Learn tab. I think this one's important because it has everything you need. Sometimes Esri, the software vendor, they don't put it in the easiest language to figure out, but it has everything you need to learn on your own. If you just want to go now before the training is ready, you can go there and struggle through and figure it out. Some people will be a natural at it. Some people might need to wait for the training, but either way, you can get a little bit of an idea of how it works there. Next one. Then you go to, is that the view, right? I can't read it even with my glasses on. That's the view page, so you get different views of things. You can just move things around, use those tools there. That's not as useful, but if there's more than one plan, then it'll become useful. And the next one is the Create tool. This is the one where you do the work. This is the one where you actually change things around. So you see number 1 says select a district, and you can see up there it says unassigned. You can click up there and you can pick your district 1, 2, 3, 4, whichever district you want to work on. And then you pick a tool. Number 2, it says select a drawing tool. There's drawing tools. If you ever used the drawing app or anything you've seen that's got arrow, it's got a rubber band line, things like that. And you can select different of the census blocks along the boundaries or wherever you want. And then it immediately changes the statistics at the bottom. So it's pretty interactive. And it takes a little bit of learning, but then when you get it, it's very cool. What I always forget is to go up there and change districts, right? And you think you're adding something to District 3, and it turns out it's 4, and then you got to go change it back, but that happens. And then the last time, well, draw your ideas. I did that. Draw your new ideas to get the new details. So the next one is review. So in this one, you can run the check that John talked about, those criteria. This runs the criteria. So if you go to review and hit check integrity, you get the next slide. And it goes through and it picks all these things. I purposely made that one so it didn't match a lot of the things, so you could see if it's green, then you're good to go. If it's an X, then you're not. You have to change that. You literally won't be able to submit it unless it meets all those criteria, unless it passes all those checks. So next one. And that is the share. This is pretty cool too, because this is how we're going to get information from you guys on the communities of interest, one of the ways we can. But also, if you have a group of people interested, you can share this plan with them. So 4 or 5 of you in different parts of the county, or like the League of Women Voters or somebody can work on a plan and share it and provide feedback to each other within this app. So that's really neat, something's never been able to be done before. And so we can go to the next one. And then that submit, right? If it's passed all the checks, you go to submit and you hit submit, it emails it to the commission and sets them up to be reviewed. So it's pretty sweet. I don't know why my watch is going off. Okay, so we encourage you to create an account and use the resources in the Learn tab to experiment with how to create and modify a plan. We have now till around mid-September, maybe the end of September for the data gets in here. So there's plenty of time to learn. So if you think you might want to do it, now's the time to go learn, because our timeline will be short when we get down to it. So right now, you can still submit, but remember, it comes from the 2020 census data, and we'll have to throw it away. It won't really meet the criteria, but it'll give you a really good idea of how it works and how little changes, like Wood Lake to Wood Grove, it doesn't seem like a big change because it's these little communities, but it changes everything. And you have to make sure you balance them. We have to get within 5% of the population between all the districts. And it can be, it's a challenge. I love it. But it's also difficult. Okay, next. And you cannot damage it, right? It's going to get all reset when we get the new data. So, you save your plans, you don't save your plans. You can't actually hurt the app, right? It can be, even if you were able to, we could fix it, but you can't really. So feel free to experiment and play with it. I put any questions, but I'm going to leave that up to the president.
Commissioners have any questions? Luis?
Mark, hi. A couple of questions. The QR code,
Yeah.
is that the only way someone can have access to this map?
I believe it's also on the commission website, on the redistricting website.
There's a tab for that?
Mhm.
Okay, I
Yeah.
missed that one.
Is the code there? Yeah.
Is there a tab? Okay.
Yeah, well, I don't think the tab is quite there ready for it. But if you go to the commission website, you can get to it there.
Oh, okay. And then, when somebody submits their map,
Mm-hmm.
and it's sent out to us, will the author of that map, will we be notified who that author is?
It'll tell you I think it'll tell you the username at least. I don't really know if it'll tell you their full name. I know it's gonna tell you the username because it'll say so-and-so submitted it.
Is it possible, once it's submit, that we can have some way to communicate with them?
I never thought of that. I'll have to go check and submit one and see if it gives you the full name. I don't even know.
That'd be important, Mark, in
Yeah,
the sense
I
that
just don't know, yeah.
I think he has a question back
Bob
there.
has a,
The email will be there.
the
Okay,
email address.
They're
Oh,
submitting it, when they create an account, they create an
Right.
email, you'll be able to communicate with them.
oh, okay.
Right.
Okay,
yeah, you can always email back, right.
okay, thank you.
I think it'll have the whole name, but that might be something, but I don't really know. I haven't tried.
Thank you.
Any others? Chairman?
that concludes the informational presentation, and it does not include, oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Vasquez. Please.
Good evening. Did I turn it off? Are you on? It's on? I'm good? Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm going to come over here because that way I can see everybody, and I have my stuff here that I want to show you. So, again, my name is Dr. Lucia Vasquez. Good evening. Thank you for coming. I'm going to go over the timeline just a little bit, but I wanted to point out, if you picked up one of these, that today is the second meeting in District 2, and then in 2 weeks we'll have one in Visalia, and then in 2 weeks after that we'll be in Dinuba, and then 2 weeks after that we'll be in Porterville. So you're welcome to come to the other ones as well, but we wanted to show you that there are some there that have them. Okay. They're telling me I'm muffled and you can't hear me, so. Better? Okay, so this is in the back, and it does have the first 5 meetings that are out in the district. But I wanted to, I know that Mr. Hess went over the overall timeline of what's happening with the redistricting, but I wanted to go ahead and show you just some of the next meetings that are be coming up. So you can see it here today, July 1st. We are in Tulare, and then we'll be going just what I said. Next slide, please. And the other thing that I wanted to tell you is that we have brand new, up-to-date, as of today, information on the website that even is more accurate than this one. And in case you had the dates and you put them in your calendar, you're going to want to recheck them, because a new date of September 30th has been added, and so all of the dates have been shifted. So commissioners, you're going to want to check that out. But so in order for the Board of Supervisors to meet their deadlines, to be able to have all the hearings, they had to do some restructuring. So the notes in your packet today are inaccurate, but the notes on the website are correct. And how can you do that? You have here on this sheet, see, I brought all my stuff. This beautiful sheet here that you also have, that's an overview, and it can, at the bottom there, will get you right to the website, or I just Googled Tulare County Redistricting, and I was at their website. So it's not difficult to get to, but when you go there, you'll have 2 things, both that overall timeline that Mr. Hess talked about, and you will have the dates that are updated. Now, I just wanted to make a point to say that we're going to all 5 districts, and then we'll have a joint hearing with the commissioners and the Board of Supervisors in the evening, just like the same in 6:30 in the evening. But then what happens is when we're going to come again to the 5 districts, it won't be at the same spots because we're trying to move them around a little bit. And after those 5 districts, then October 21st, our commissioners by then will have made the recommendations, and we'll have the final, turn in final maps and final recommendations October 21st, and then it will go to the hands of the Board of Supervisors, but those will be Tuesday morning meetings. So the commissioners, of course, are welcome to join, and the Board of Supervisors, but to give you an update that those will be on Tuesday mornings at the Board of Supervisors. If you would like a copy of the dates and updates on your comment card, there's at the very bottom a place that you can put your email, and you can go ahead and request that in case you want an electronic version be sent to you. And I believe that that's all I have for you today. I just wanted to give you an update on the timelines. If anybody has a group that they would like us to come speak, talk about redistricting, give you an overview of what it is, maybe talk a little bit more about communities of interest or anything like that, please feel free to contact us as well. And our numbers and stuff are on that blue flyer as well. Thank you for coming. We'll see you next time.
That concludes the informational presentations, and we will now have a break that I mentioned earlier, and the break should be 5 minutes, no more, which means we will reconvene at 20 minutes before the hour of 8.
All right.
minutes ago? Yeah. You will, if you will please. Please take your seats. Now is the time in the meeting where the commission will hear public comment on the informational presentation. Any persons addressing the commission will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes so that all interested parties have an opportunity to speak. We will have a maximum of 30 minutes for the total comment allotted to this item. If there's anybody here who has not filled out a public comment card, I urge you to do so and hand it to the clerk. And I'd like the clerk to call on those who have submitted comment cards.
Yes, I have a card for Maylee McConney.
Miley Melkonian from Visalia. Ooh, okay, I have two questions, one for Mr. Hess and one for Mr. Clark. So let me go with Mr. Hess first because I think that'll be shorter. That slide, are we gonna be able to find the slide? You had the 8 criteria, and the 8th criterion was no political parties may be considered. And you also mentioned that the supervisorial elections are nonpartisan anyway. So what about incumbency? Is that same law not also addressing that?
Yeah, good question. I mentioned it, I think, 2 weeks ago, but I didn't mention it tonight, that the new update in the Fair Maps Act that was adopted recently, so it did not apply in 2010, 2011, is that likewise that we cannot consider political party representation. Also, districts cannot be drawn in such a way that they consider the incumbent's current home or residence. So you can't make it so, hey, you know, Mr. Smith or Mrs. Smith lives right here. It wouldn't be fair to Mr. or Mrs. Smith if they were unseated by virtue of redistricting. That was permissible 10 years ago. That is no longer permissible. And that is something also, one of the criteria that the commission has they have the option of adding additional criteria. I forgot to mention this. One that was done last time, 10 years ago, was that the board member be accessible to all of the residents throughout the district, so that if they knew where the board member lived, that board member lives centrally to the district, and that the commission draw the boundaries around that person's residence. That's no longer permissible, and so the commission couldn't impose that criteria this time.
Okay, thank you. So incumbency is no.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, great, thank you. And then for Mr. Clark, the slide, this slide, where's Mr. Oh, do you remember this slide?
I would have to look it up. What is it? The create an account slide?
It's the one where you were giving us the process on S3, and early on in the process, there's a slide that says there are 3 ways you have 3 options. You can start with the current map.
The 3 plans, right?
Okay. The 3 whats?
Right.
Okay, so you can have a blank. You can start with a blank map of the county. You can start with the current, the county map with the current divisions, and tweak that.
Right.
What's the 3rd one?
It's one that I set up so people can draw the community of interest.
Great.
It's a little bit tricky to submit it, but we're going to have training on that. But you'll be able to draw the community interest and submit it basically to a group that includes the whole commission and those of us here. Yeah.
Will it be subject to those six criteria, those 6 checks?
No, because it's not actually submitting a plan. It's just submitting a community of interest, basically. It's the same like I talked about sharing. It's sort of marking it up and then sharing it.
Okay.
So it's not actually submitting a plan.
Oh,
Right? So it doesn't
but-
go through the checks.
But it will have the same weight. The commissioners can
Yes.
take it as having the same weight as a 5-district plan.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll see it. Right. And I'm sure that, yeah.
Okay.
But they'll see it, and then what they decide to direct me to do is up to them.
Okay, okay. Well, that's nice to hear. That's
Yeah.
wonderful to hear. Would it be possible in your next presentation to include a go-through on that? How to do that?
Yeah, that's something that's kind of complicated, and we'll be doing it in a training sessions for that. It's not easy, to be honest with you, because it involves the group and drawing a polygon and submitting it and stuff. So this is just an informational. Well, we do training in another forum.
And maybe at least if some of us know how to do it, we can be
That's our goal.
a pebble in the pond.
I believe that's the goal. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Next speaker, Alex Gutierrez.
Okay, you all can hear me? Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, fellow commissioners. I want to thank you all for volunteering to do this advisory committee on something so important. The main topic that I wanted to talk about was the public outreach and how it matters. I knew about this commission meeting today because of a friend sending me the flyer. Regular people on a regular day are maybe not seeing this because I didn't see it on my Facebook, on my social media, or that I've noticed anywhere that circulates amongst the majority of the people to be explained. So maybe when you all take that up at the next item, you guys can try and get the largest participation possible as you travel through the supervisorial districts, because we don't want you wasting your time by not having the most you can get for your information purposes. And that similarly applies to the Board of Supervisors, which brings you to my next point, which is they seem to be the ones that have the final decision. I'm glad the previous speaker mentioned number 8, which is the no political parties. I was thinking on that one when it was discussed, is does the public have access to information that you all compile, you at the county level, to know which maps favor one party or the other? Because that's information that should be given to us by the taxpayer-funded entities such as yourselves, because then we will know more clearly which area maps favor one or the other, or which ones are more nonpartisan or more balanced to be in compliance with that one, because that seems to be a pretty big deal. I understand the CAO assistant did say that the Board of Supervisors is a nonpartisan board. We all know that. But we also all know that it's kind of hard to escape partisan politics these days too. Finally, community of interest was a very interesting part of the presentation today to me, because in the community interest, it talked about how they can be identified between cultures, it could be identified between economic status, which I like both. So if 10 years ago, if the Hispanic population, which is something it's like the giant in the room here, has grown, will you all consider giving the Hispanic population an extra supervisor seat as a community of interest? Similarly, when it comes to economics, how would you best address the poverty levels that exist here when it comes to that, when it comes to figuring out the income levels of each district, or whether you should have one district that's dedicated to low income, or one district who maybe is high income, or preventing one from being more like the other to have more of a balance? Because you should also know as commissioners is this is all based on residents and people. But what you're deciding on is the political boundaries of elected officials, which are elected by registered US citizens who vote. So you need to take that into consideration, because that's a difference when you look at the both, because one is population and the other one is who actually gets to decide who those people we give our power to, who they are. And It concludes
Could-
that the power rests with the Board of Super. Yes?
Could you wrap up your
Yeah.
remarks?
Yeah,
Sure.
it was the last sentence. That the power does lie at the end with the Board of Supervisors, so the Board of Supervisors should be solicited for confirmation to see, by the press really, to see where they would stand to take you all seriously. Because we don't want them dismissing all your volunteer hard work. So I look forward to the process that you guys go around the county. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for letting me speak.
Our next speaker, Angel Reese.
Hi. So thank you to the commissioners. My question is for Mr. Clark. Mr. Clark, I know that you said that that we'll be getting the information from the 2020 census by September. Could you give us like a time frame, and this is only for my sake of, calendaring. How much time will we have in order to submit our maps with the data for the 2020 census?
That's a little bit still up in the air. It's going to be pretty short, though. A lot shorter than normal. Normally, right now, we'd be drawing the districts and coming up with plans, but they have to be ready for the next election. And to get those ready, once we get that done, elections has to redraw every precinct in the county so they know where the voters are. And that's actually a lot bigger process even than this. It's not more important, but it's an administrative process. And so that takes a long time. So we have to get it a short time to get it done and get that in with, we're trying to have it by mid-December, but that's the plan. We're trying to get it earlier, but that's so far the timeline, I believe, is mid-December to get it out. So if the new data gets in there by the 30th of September, that doesn't leave a lot of time. It's much rushed this time because of COVID and delays, yeah.
Thank you. And the follow-up question that I have, and this isn't to you, Mr. Clark, this is to anybody. How will the county let us know that the information is in? How would the community know that, okay, this is what we have, the data, you can go ahead and start drawing your maps? What's the plan for that? How are we going to know as the community members?
Well, I would speculate that the first and foremost communications tool would be our website, and making some sort of announcement on the website. Otherwise, I have a question for you, Dr. Vasquez or Lolly. Are we keeping some sort of record of who attends these meetings? We are. So we could notify all the attendees of our being in receipt of the census data. We could.
We have, if they filled out comment cards, we did ask them to put their email on there if they would like to be informed, so you could put that on your comment card. The other thing is that you'll notice that the date that we suspect that the data will be released is September 23rd. That coincides with one of our meetings, and that it'll take at least a week to get it on the database. So we're looking at October 7th from our best estimate of when that's coming, so that each meeting we'll be able to give you an update of where that is, because we're just working on estimates, but our best estimates are also aligned with our timeline. So September 23rd, we have a meeting. October 7th, we have a meeting. Right now, our tentative timeline is that by October 7th, that we would have received it and been able to put it in the data. But please feel free to put your email on your comment card.
And one thing I'd like to add on the timeline just really quickly is when the census data is released is unknown and it's outside of our control. It actually is released by the federal government to the state, as we mentioned 2 weeks ago, and then the state holds it for a little while they make some adjustments. So while we get what's called the legacy data, the federal government's calling it legacy data, we are not allowed to use that to draw maps until we receive it from the state. What the state is doing during that time is they're correcting where certain prisoners live. So they're putting them in the right county. What happens is we discovered this week, and that's why there were some adjustments to the calendar already, that if it comes out before September 16th, we have to wait, meaning the commission has to wait 2 weeks to actually begin drawing a map from the date of receipt until drawing their first map. If it comes out after September 16th, September 17th, or later, they only have to wait 1 week. And I think there's another date, if it comes out, let's say October something, they can do it October 16th, they can do it immediately. So there's really a lot of unknowns as to what that timeline is going to look like in August, September, October right now. So, bear with us as we put tentative dates on the schedule.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Emphasis on the bear with us. We're all playing this by ear in terms of the information we need before we can start the process of redistricting.
Our next speaker, Abigail Solis.
Good evening. Thanks so much for the opportunity to ask a question. I just really have a couple of clarifying questions. In the presentation, you noted on number 5, city or CDP integrity, that a community cannot be split up. However, in the presentation, we talked about how the city of Visalia has 140,000, so it's automatically split up. Is that an exception to that rule, and are there any other exceptions that may apply?
So it has to do with the priorities. The first priority is population equality. So if it's because the number 5 is lower than number 1, in that case, number 1 supersedes number 5, meaning population equality is number 1, and the splitting up cities or CDPs was number 5. Number 1 takes precedent.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. My next question or comment is about the communities of interest. Obviously, it's a hot topic. In your presentation, I was glad to see that you went over this. However, it was sort of hard to understand. Although I appreciate the Raiders and Dodgers examples, I wonder if moving forward you can give some more practical examples of the kind of interest you're referring to, as was referred to earlier, possibly low-income people, race, ethnicity, if that's applicable, so people can have a better idea of what you're talking about. And keeping that in mind, I was wondering if there was anything more the commission or the county can do to make rural community residents more aware of this process. You referred to the internet, looking on the website, which is a great opportunity for those of us who have access or know how to use it. But in the rural communities, a lot of residents do not know how to use the internet, or they're not tech savvy enough. So I would really recommend using social media outlets like Facebook, as well as continue to partner with community agencies to get the word out, because I think this information would be really interesting to people if they knew exactly what was being covered. So last point about the presentation is if we could make it more applicable real life situations, I think it would be more interesting for the community to continue to be engaged. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker, Lucy Hernandez.
Mr. Chairman, I think Dr. Vasquez wanted to perhaps comment.
If I may?
Oh, yes.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to let you know, Abigail, that for instance, last week I went to the Ivanhoe community meeting, and what they do is, because you do have a population that aren't on a lot of other stuff, but what they do is they have their community meeting and then they blast it on Facebook. And so I was their guest this week and explained redistricting and invited them all. So again, I will repeat, if any of you have groups or you would like me to come to Pixley or Parkland or Early Mart, I would love to come, and we can do it bilingually and get that word out. So again, I repeat myself, if you have any groups that you would like us to come, especially those that are hard to reach, we're willing to come and visit.
Good evening, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I didn't know about this. I just found out the other day, like 2 days ago, and I think it is important since my name is Lucy Hernandez, and I'm from the community of West Goshen, and I see that our district our community is one of the ones in limbo that we might change from one district to another district. So I think this is very important for us to know before what to expect, because right now we are very happy with our board of supervisors. So I would like to know more information, and I would like to know what's the beneficial to our communities, because as everybody is aware that our communities, especially like West Goshen and Cutler Rossi, we are very disadvantaged communities, and people need to know about these meetings, because I think that it's important for our people to be engaged in this kind of decisions that you guys are making and dividing our district. So I will really appreciate if we get some kind of notice, or at least try to communicate with somebody that represents our community so we could get involved if we would like to know more information. Thank you very much. That's it.
Thank you.
We now have a speaker, Lori Pesante, on Zoom. If I can ask Lori to please unmute your mic.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Lori Pesante. I'm the Director of Civic Engagement for the Dolores Huerta Foundation. We're very proud to have 3 chapters in Tulare County, one in Woodlake, one in Lindsay, and one in Tulare, including an office in Tulare. And as I've listened to the first public meeting and now this public meeting, I really want to compliment this commission for being far and away the most organized, transparent, and accessible process with the best educational content I've seen so far of any of the counties where we are doing this important work. So I really want to thank you all for being a part of making that happen for everybody in Tulare County. And in particular, I would like to invite anybody who is interested in playing around with maps or learning more about the process in a conversive way. We are planning to get together very soon and take a look at some things and maybe try to draw some lines and talk about what those lines mean for each of us. And especially since it's our mission at DHF to inspire and organize communities empowered to pursue social justice, we're especially interested in making sure that people who maybe aren't here tonight can have a chance to be here too. Certainly we're interested in especially some of the folks who maybe don't have water to drink. We had 2 food banks recently, one in Woodlake and one in Lindsay, where I learned very quickly from talking to people that they're having difficult time finding housing and they're having a difficult time finding water. And so if folks want to engage in the redistricting process and learn about how it can help them to empower their communities to be heard and represented at the Board of Supervisors, I hope you'll each go to our website or contact me. My name is Lori Pesante and my email address is just lpesante@doloreshuerta.org. Feel free to reach out to us there in Tulare. You have a beautiful, beautiful county, and we really look forward to being a part of this process with all of you. Thank you so much. Oh, and to Mr. Clark, I'd like to know if you happen to have a date for your training session. I'm very interested in learning how to use your tool, the GIS mapping tool that you have up there. It's a very nice one.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll put out the date and try and make sure you know.
Mr. Chair, that concludes our Zoom public comment and I believe in person.
To staff, what are the current ways that we're communicating to the community, particularly the rural community? What mediums are we using? Can anyone ask that question? Are we using Instagram? Are we using Facebook? Are we using whatever forms in social media?
Yes, in the rural communities, we're doing flyers and we're doing small groups. I've been to, like I said, Ivanhoe, Dinuba. There was a luncheon with the Tulare County League of Mexican American Women this weekend, and I did a whole little 5-minute on redistricting. We're going to be in Poplar on Friday, I believe, that there's a vaccination vaccine thing. So we're on Facebook, we're on social media, we're around. But I've been talking to staff here. I really want to send more out. to specific groups. Like when we went to the city council in Farmersville, they said, send me what you have and we'll get it out to our population. So getting it to different cities or to different organizations, the Tulare Kings Hispanic Chamber will be sending out to them and all their members soon as well. Does that answer your question?
Clear.
And many of the people are here is because I sent them stuff and because to those, so I know that things, I've been to different organizations as well.
If I may, also, like in those events, if we have some flyers to pass, to let our residents know that we're having these meetings, that would be very good to let them know.
We'll have to have you come to the microphone because we want to record what you say. And I said without my microphone on.
Sorry, yes, I just wanted to add a little bit, like for West Goshen, we have family services. Her name is Julia Castro. She's one of the leaders right there in West Goshen that she sends a text message to our community when every event is going on. And I think that right now that we are working with all these vaccine events, it would be very nice to have a flyer or something to let our communities know that these kind of meetings are going on with our districts. Thank you.
We'll communicate that to staff, and thank you for the suggestion.
Thank you.
John, you mind if I have a few words about communication?
Yes, please.
Who's ever in charge of the County of Tulare's Facebook, maybe we could boost some of these Facebook posts. The one for this meeting only got 1 like out of a page with 7,800 followers. Maybe we could boost it to get some more outreach, because organically it's not going to get any traction. I'm looking at it right now, and I think you guys have Instagram as well?
Our media team is the one that handles all of that, so I don't actually know, I don't have Instagram myself, so I don't know if that's something we have. We can check with them and see if that's the case.
Yeah. All right, just a suggestion.
You'll have to go to the microphone, please.
Could someone answer if this committee was allocated a budget from the County Board of Supervisors to promote public participation in this? Because it seems like it's falling on a small group of people. Maybe you need to expand it some. So if you guys have some money, that can be put out there, then you can get a higher return, like boosts and such, like flyer printing or actual manpower, women power, whatever, out into the streets. Thank you.
Our budget is, in a word, modest.
So we have in the administrative office, we're using our current budget, so it's really, there's not a specific number that we're limited to. It is modest, and we're trying to keep it as managed as possible. But the things like, Dr. Vasquez and Lolly's services, they're part of our budget, and their efforts to bring in water and materials and all of their efforts to get the word out as part of our county's budget as well. The materials that we have, we're paying for as well. So we can go and perhaps look for a specific number, but I don't know it offhand.
And if I may, we'll be having a little video of me, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, just letting people know what redistricting is and inviting them to come to the meetings, and that should be coming out soon as well on social media.
If any of you have any specific suggestions as to how we can increase participation, we would welcome them. It is now time for item 6 on the budget. You've planted the seed on the agenda, and it's commission discussion items. I'll turn that over to staff. What items are we to discuss this evening?
So I think first up is public outreach matters. There were some good comments there that could segue into anything that Lolly or Lucia want to provide. After that, we can provide some other administrative items, but I'll hand it off to Dr. Vasquez if she has any public outreach items.
Yeah, and I appreciate all of your input on that, but just so you know, we have been out out and about and giving our spiel and working on a little video that we can get out there as well. So I'll be looking for all your emails to send that to you so you can forward it to all of your networks. But thanks for the suggestions, and we'll be out to West Fresno with West Goshen with some flyers and get that gone as well. Thank you.
So for administrative matters, really there aren't much that we haven't covered already. The timeline, I was intending on giving some updates, but I think we've discussed that through some question responses and so forth, that ultimately, as we mentioned, and we believe we're going to get the census information in September. It's not a precise date. What is precise is the final date with which the county has to adopt its boundaries is December 15th of this year. In order for, as Mark Clark mentioned, in order for our county registrar of voters, they have to go through, it's an incredibly process that requires a lot of attention, a lot of detail. Every district throughout the entire county that's doing redistricting, so all the cities, the county, even state assembly, state senate, even Congress, all of those have different precincts. So everyone that is in here, you need to know which of those you're going to be voting in the next primary. So the registrar of voters has to do all of that across the entire county, and it takes quite a bit of time. So in order for them to make that happen before the June primary, we have to get that information to them by December 15th as required by state law. That's why, if you were wondering, that's why there's such a big time frame between December when our process is ending and the primary. It's because the registrar of voters does a whole lot of work on that. The commission will be providing their maps about a month to a month and a half before that date, at which point the board then will continue to seek more and more comments. So that'll be a continuing process until adoption. There was an updated contact list for the commissioners in your packet today provided. There were some email changes for some of the members, so you'll see that in there. If you have any questions on the travel claim form, let me know, but otherwise please sign it and return to staff at your soonest opportunity. And those are all the administrative notes that I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Jeff, do you have anything to contribute? All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair, clerk over here. I just wanted to follow up on John's administrative matters. The last meeting, Commissioner Mata wanted to bring up the reminder about the ethics training as well as the conflict of interest Form 700s. I have a few members who are still outstanding on those, so I just wanted to remind everybody here that those are due. And there are a few of you who may not have also connected to your county email address where I am actually sending this information. So after the meeting, if you want to connect with me so we can get those completed and get you checked off. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Hobbs?
He's ready to go.
Mr.
Future items. Future items, July 15th. Is this correct information, Doctor? Okay. July 15th. 6:30 p.m. at Visalia Convention Center. We'll be having the District 3 meeting. And on July 29th, 2 weeks after that, we'll be meeting in Dinuba at the Parks and Community Services Recreation Center in District 4. And finally, before I adjourn for the second time, we'd like Dr. Vasquez to talk about evaluation of the meeting.
Yeah, thank you. It's just nice to do a quick evaluation. We call it a plus delta, and I'd like to go around. We got really great information last time. If I could just ask the commissioners something that you liked about the meeting and something you would have changed.
Rodney Blanco, I like the feedback about the need for additional public outreach. I didn't like that there weren't page numbers on the handout.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Diaz?
I like the new setup, and like the input.
Thank you.
I believe that we need to be cognizant of being fair and consistent with everybody. So everyone has 3 minutes, so they have 3 minutes, not allow a certain individuals or an individual to go beyond the 3 minutes. And then when another individual is going beyond the 3 minutes, to call it to his attention that his 3 minutes are up. I think we need to be fair and consistent.
A tighter schedule. And anything that you liked about today?
Of course, I liked everything about today. It's my district.
Thank you. Commissioner Mata?
First, I'd like to take a minute. We spent some time, the chairman and myself, with staff members to make sure we got this meeting organized in a way that it could flow a little bit better. And I did appreciate all the work by all the staff members and Dr. Vasquez and Lali. I think the meeting flowed a lot better, so I do appreciate that. I appreciate all the people that came. It's very rare when we have meetings that people attend, public meetings at whether it's the council level or board of supervisors, so I do appreciate all of you that took the time out of your evening to come tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Hobbs?
Well, I appreciate the participation of the public. I think we're, relatively speaking, I think we're doing very well in that regard, because the meeting in Exeter was well attended, and this meeting, for meetings like this is well attended, folks. So I do appreciate that, and I'd like the pages to be numbered too. I might do a little better in following through if I have numbered pages.
Thank you. Commissioner Sepulveda?
Yes, I like the dialogue with regards to outreach, and I think I enjoyed the dialogue regarding the outreach, and I think we need to make a better effort to talk to our partners and make sure that we reach out to the rural community as well as those people who are affected by the digital divide. And so how do we communicate with that particular population that don't have access to computers or social media? We need to do a stronger effort.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gomez?
Yes, I agree with the vice chair. As she mentioned, the huddle that you guys had with staff, it definitely showed, and it paid off. So I definitely appreciated the organization this time around, and the flow was better. And in terms of, I guess, community outreach, it is concerning. I know that in the last meeting we had also heard about sort of the short notice for some folks to be aware of these meetings. So just really echoing the boost in social media outlets and different groups across different networks, but appreciate today. And also the tech was great. I was able to join by Zoom, and now I'm in person, so that was somewhat smooth, but yes, thank you.
Great, thank you. Commissioner George?
Well, I really enjoy the input. It's good for me to hear from the different segments of the community. And one improvement, man, it's cold tonight. But other than that, very, very informative.
Step outside, so a little more monitoring. Thank you.
Everything was well organized, set up, no communication errors. Just another good meeting.
Great, thank you. Commissioner McCarty?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the input from the community. It really flowed well tonight. Seems like we're very organized. My hat's off to the staff. The sound, the layout, very good. The seats were comfortable. The only downside is we did run out of coffee. But very good meeting.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commissioners.
I am told that now I can adjourn the meeting.